Hey everybody, I'm Logan Alec. I'm a CPA. Today we're talking about the IRS Notice CP504B. Now, this is basically the business equivalent of the CP504, and it's not a notice that you want to receive because it is the IRS's notice of intent to levy a business taxpayer. Now, what I have on screen here is a redacted version of a CP504B that one of our clients here at Choice Tax Relief got with respect to past due 941 payroll taxes. I'm going to go through this notice section by section so that you know exactly what you're looking at when you receive this notice. At the end of the video, I'm going to tell you exactly what you should do if you receive this notice. But first, let's talk about what does this actually mean? Why does the IRS send this to you? What is a notice of intent to levy your property or rights to property? Okay, so why does the IRS send this notice? What is this notice? The IRS sends this notice because, in its opinion, it has given you sufficient time to remedy your tax situation with the IRS. Okay, basically, you owe the IRS some money. It has sent you previous notices, maybe a CP161, maybe some other business collections notices. And yet, the IRS's opinion, the time for you to deal with the issue and the time for the IRS to deal nicely with you has run out. And therefore, it is now threatening you with levy action. Okay, what is levy action? Levy action is basically when the IRS starts taking your stuff, and it's not very fun. So that's the occasion for this notice. In the big bold here, you'll see the amount due. In this case, $102,976.63. Note that this amount due is only for the period and tax type indicated in the upper right-hand corner of the notice. Okay, also indicated in this paragraph here. Right. So in this case, our particular client owed $102,976.63 only for Q4 2020 941. Okay, payroll taxes. All right. They owed other balances for other quarters as well. They also owed annual balances for the 940, which is the annual one. So anyway, but you know, let's say it's not payroll taxes. Let's say it's corporate income taxes, right? You'd still get a CP504B, right? Yeah, but form number would say 1120 instead. Okay, capiche? Capiche. All right. So right, and then they just kind of reiterate here. This is a notice of intent to levy your property or rights to property, as we notified you before. This is kind of like, you know, when you're on an email chain and somebody doesn't realize that you had sent them the email previously or attached the thing previously, and they're like, "Hey, I'm just following up on this," and you're like, "As previously stated," you know, that's kind of the IRS giving you a little jab here. It's like, look, we've told you about this before, right? As we notified you before, maybe on a CP161 or something, our records show you have unpaid taxes for the tax period ending December 31st, 2020, in this case, for 941. If you don't call us immediately to make payment arrangements or we don't receive the amount due within 30 days from the date of this notice, we may levy your property or rights to property and apply it to the balance owed. Okay? Then you have the billing summary here. The amount you owed is usually the underlying amount of the tax due, plus failure to pay penalty and interest charges for a total amount due immediately. Now, I will say sometimes these amounts look a little low here, right, for failure to pay penalty and interest, you know, between when this was due and the day of this notice. So sometimes in here, you'll already have accrued penalty and interest. Assessed penalty and interest, and this is just the accrued amounts that haven't been assessed yet. And by assessed, it just means not officially recorded on the government's books yet. Okay. Anyway, this is the amount they want, right? And you know, if you feel like paying, which may or may not be the best thing to do, but if you feel like paying the IRS, you know, what you owe in full, if you just have this money laying around, you can, you know, cut out this payment coupon, you know, make your check to U.S. Treasury, write your EIN, the tax period, then form on your payment, and send it over here, right? Obviously, most clients who get notices like this, most taxpayers who get notices like this, they don't just have the money laying around to pay what's owed. But that's what the IRS wants you to do, right? And they say as much here. What you need to do immediately: pay the amount immediately, or you may file a notice of federal tax lien. The amount of interest will increase, and additional penalties may apply. Right? That's obviously what they want you to do, right? The whole point of the IRS taking the effort, well, it's not really effort, these are computer generated, but expending the resources to print these things and mail these things, the whole point is to get you to pay the money, right? It's a collections notice. That's what it is. They say various ways you can pay. You can pay online or by phone or mail check or money order. You can pay at EFTS.gov. And this little paragraph here is basically saying, if you pay us by check, at the bottom of the check is your routing number and your account number. They're saying we can, we can use that information to withdraw the money from your account. Okay, it's kind of redundant, but that's what this is saying. They give you a number if you disagree with the amount due. I mean, honestly, even if you disagree with the amount due, that means possibly the IRS did a substitute payroll tax return for you here, or maybe the payroll tax return you filed was incorrect. In the first case, you just filed an original 941 or whatever the return is. The second case, you'd file an amended 941. Talking to somebody on the phone with the IRS isn't really going to fix the issue, because that would be the course of action you have to take. All right, what you need to know. Now the IRS is basically going to tell you the consequences, right, of what happens if you don't fix this issue. This notice is your notice of intent to levy under Internal Revenue Code Section 6331D. That code section basically says that before the IRS takes levy action against the taxpayer must give them notice, okay, no later than 30 days before the date that they intend to levy the taxpayer. And if they don't, then the levy is improper and IRS hasn't followed due process. Now, here's a little secret that you may not, it's kind of buried in here. But before the IRS can start levying most things, including the things they list here, your AR and other income, bank accounts, business assets, they also have to give you the opportunity to request a collection due process hearing. If you have not already received a notice giving you your rights and information about requesting a collection due process hearing pertaining to the tax period for the type of tax indicated on the upper right-hand corner of the first page of your CP504B, the IRS cannot take these things merely because they sent you a CP504 under Section 6331D, because there's another notice requirement that the IRS has to give you before they levy you. Okay, and that is your notice of your right to a collection due process hearing. There are some exceptions, but for the vast majority of folks out there and businesses out there, those exceptions do not apply. The IRS is going to have to give you your CDP rights before they can start levying your bank account, business assets, accounts receivable, things like this. Okay. A notice that ACS may send giving you your CDP rights is an LT11B. It'll basically say, like on the top here, it'll say notice of intent to levy again and notice of your rights to a hearing, or some variant of that. Now, even before you get those CDP rights, you can still do a cap appeal. Okay. Now the CDP hearing, there's a bit more weight with that. There is, you have the right to contest the CDP hearing in tax court if you disagree with the findings. Typically, right, and I'm not saying this is prescriptive for each and every situation, much less yours, because I don't really know who you are. Typically, we'll just wait to get the CDP rights and request a CDP hearing if a client receives a CP504B. Okay. But once you go into that CDP hearing, you got to be prepared. You can't just barf on the appeals officer, well, here's all my stuff, and let them kind of call the shots. No, you need a game plan, right? If you don't know how to formulate a game plan for your particular situation, you got to work with a professional who does. There's some document upload tool. I guess you could use that for the cap appeal request. We don't do that. We fax it. But anyway, passport. I've made videos about this. Yes, the IRS can take your passport, right, for seriously delinquent tax debt. I'm not gonna. Well, they can't take your passport. They can certify your tax debt to the State Department as seriously delinquent, and then the State Department, when it receives a application for a new passport or renewal of an existing passport, they will deny that request because the individual has tax debt that the IRS is certified to the State Department is seriously delinquent. In some cases, they can revoke the passport, but usually it's just blocking the renewal or the obtaining of a new passport. I made videos about this. I'm not going to go into it in detail here. Link to one of those videos at the top of the screen. Payment options, I'm not going to go in detail here. It's basically talking about how you can pay online, mail. We've already kind of covered this. Mail a payment, right? Okay, check your money order. Now, here is kind of sneaking in here. What are some tax relief options for you? Well, if you can't pay it all now, you can apply for a payment plan. Okay. In this case, for this 941 taxes, I don't think this person could just set it up at irs.gov.opa because they owe more than $25,000. Okay. The limit to set it up online for individuals is 50. Business, 941 taxes, 25 grand. Consider an offer in compromise. Interesting, right? An offer in compromise is an agreement with the IRS to settle your tax debt for less than you owe, and it can be a valid option for some taxpayers. Certainly not all taxpayers qualify. Or you can request a temporary collection delay. It's basically CNC status, hardship status, whatever you want to call it. I've talked more about both offers in compromise and currently non-electable status many, many times over the years on my channel. If you've watched my channel at all, you're probably very familiar with those things. What happens if you don't deal with the issue? And the IRS says if we don't hear from you, then they might file a notice of federal tax lien against you. Okay? What's notice of federal tax lien? It's a document filed in public record, typically your county recorder's office, that basically puts the world on notice that you, or in this case your business, owes the IRS money. Okay? That's all it is. That's different than the levy. Levy is the IRS actually taking your stuff. Okay, lien is just a document filed in county recorder's office. Here's some additional information. It's pretty pat for most IRS notices these days. It talks about some publications you read, where to get tax forms, publication 594, the IRS collections process, how to pay online. An address where you can write to the IRS about this issue. Nothing too groundbreaking there. Then they kind of break down the penalties and everything, the penalties and interest that they may hit you with. Failure to pay 0.5% a month or part of a month that the taxes due, and that percentage is, of course, a percentage of the balance owed. This one, failure to file is not on here, but that's 5% of the balance owed per month or part of a month for which the tax return was late. Both of those penalties max out at 25% individually. Interest, they'll break down the interest calculation here. The interest rate by quarter multiplied by the unpaid balance by quarter. Interest does compound daily, the IRS, and it's it's charged on not just the principal balance, the underlying tax balance, but also interest is charged on interest and also on penalties. I have a whole video about how IRS interest is calculated, how the interest rate is calculated every quarter. Link to that video at the top of the screen if you're interested in learning more about that. And there you have it, folks. That's the CP504B. The scary notice, right? Notice of intent to levy, meaning to start taking your stuff. What should you do if you receive your notice? Well, like when you receive any notice, A, make sure that the information is accurate, right? First step. B, I would say, if you agree the information's accurate, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, I do owe this much. See if you can get some penalty relief. I've talked about this in other videos. I'm not going to go into detail on this, but see if you can knock off some of those penalties on your account. Okay. And so now at this point, you agree that you owe some balance, right? You may have gotten some penalties knocked off, but now you have this balance, right? And you got to deal with it, right? If you can't just pay it all off right now, look, if you have liquid assets to easily pay off what you owe, that's generally the best thing to do, right? Problem is, most people don't, right? So if you don't have the liquid assets to just pay off what you owe right now, you got to put together a game plan, right? You got to figure out what you're going to do. You still have some time here before the IRS goes after you, right? Because they still have to give you your CDP rights, right? Which they will probably do shortly after the 30-day period after the CP504B, right? So you still have a little bit of time there to kind of figure it out. What are you going to do? Does your business qualify for an offer in compromise? Or CNC status maybe? or some kind of payment plan, a full pay, maybe a partial payment. You kind of have to figure those things out. And fundamental to figuring that out, I hate to say it because I know a lot of folks don't want to hear it, but is getting your books together for your business, right? Because how are you going to show the IRS, well, look, I'm only cash flowing this much a month if you don't have a good set of books that reconcile to your bank and credit card statements, okay? That is one of the first things we ask for when representing a business taxpayer before the IRS because it's so essential, right? It's really essential to, making a successful argument with the IRS regarding any one of these tax relief programs, right? And then once you have your game plan, you gotta go for it, right? If you think you can, work that resolution in now with ACS, try it, right? They reject it. Go for the CDP request, right? And take it up with appeals, right? Just stick to your guns. Don't let anyone push you around. Once you have the game plan in place and you're confident that you're operating within IRS rules and procedures, go for it. Folks, if you or your business owe at least $10,000 to the IRS or your state, or you or your business have multiple years of unfiled tax returns with the IRS, that's what we're here for. Give us a call. Here at Choice Tax Relief, you qualify for a free consultation if those things apply to you. 866-8000-TAX, that's 866-8000-829. Or you can go to choicetaxrelief.com, fill out the form on the website, and we will reach out to you. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.